Okay, so hi guys. Welcome everyone to today's webinar and thank you again for joining us. We understand that most of the people who would be joining us today would be from the human resources or talent acquisition teams, or could also be professional consultants running their own recruitment firms. So wherever you're watching us from today, welcome. And what is the webinar for today about? Today's learning webinar is about building a strong digital recruitment strategy for your team. And in this webinar, our speaker is hoping to answer questions like what is digital recruitment, its advantages or strategies that are actually in line with this, or how do you build your employer branding or reputation in social media platforms and other tools, or how to best connect with your audience during the pandemic, especially during these trying times. But to quickly start, I'm sure you're all very familiar already with how Zoom webinars work. But as a reminder or refresher for every one of the house rules, so all participants will be on mute. But to make it more engaging, you can type in your questions in the question and answer box, and this would all be read and answered at the latter part of the webinar. So keep on sending these as we go along. And for any other comments or reactions, you can always use the live chat box. And lastly, a recording of this webinar would be made available for you. So feel free to share it to your teammates after the webinar. So we see that we have 35 attendees already. So if you are also very excited for this webinar, I mean, send us where you're listening from or from which company you are, and we'll give you a shout out in a bit. But for everyone who is joining us and who are not familiar yet with what KMC is, who we are and what we do, let me introduce this to you. KMC is the Philippines' first and largest shared services facilitator in the Philippines. So we are also a professional employment organization, which is known with a reputation as employer of choice. And this is something that our community members of over 1,800 are like testimony to. So we help our clients with premium office spaces and high performing teams, both for our local and international partners. And how do we do this? So on the next slide, you'll be seeing that this is made possible with KMC's large footprint all over the nation, with over 55 floors and 23 offices that constitutes to over 15,500 desks nationwide. And the great news is it does not stop there. On the next slide, you'd see that as a solution to the growing demand of flexible working arrangements from employers and employees, KMC has introduced its Triple H solutions, which allows teams to work efficiently from, well, first, their headquarters. That's our first H. The second H is through a hub and spoke model, which is basically working near home solution. So it's anywhere that's nearest and safest to you across the sites that we have shared earlier. And lastly, working from home, the third H, through our CASA model, which is complete with hardware, your workstation, and fiber internet connection. So it actually helps a lot of businesses, as you can see in the next slide, because you're not committed to one working arrangement. You can actually have a mix and match of any of these models depending on which resonates best to your team, to your business, whichever is most flexible and whichever is most efficient for them. On the other side, as I've mentioned, we are a professional employment organization. So we support our clients with high performing distributed team members through KNC teams. And this is a complete end to end HRBP support from talent recruitment to onboarding, all the way to their monthly HR and payroll management. But we all know that high performing teams all start with the compatibility of the employer and the employee, which becomes a success if the matchmaking of the recruitment process has effectively taken place, meaning the people that we have are the best fit to the roles that we are looking for. And that's also one of the great things that KMC takes pride of. I mean, we have a strong team, of talent acquisition team members. They are also in this call who make sure that this is possible. So, and how do you do that with today's time, challenges, and trends? So that's what this webinar is for, and that's where Danica and Metamorphosis Group comes in. And to quickly introduce, our speaker is a recruitment specialist a career coach, and a personal branding strategist with experience in both local and international job markets. So you'd be able to see that she has in the exposure in the business process outsourcing, shared services, information technology, hospitality, retail, and staffing industries during time as a recruiter. And now she educates candidates on the value of discovering one's purpose to effectively communicate value in their resume and LinkedIn profiles. So she also provides consultation services to recruiters eager to build digitalized personal and employer branding for better hiring results. So at the end of this webinar, we hope to answer the questions that we have shared earlier. And without further ado, I give you guys Danica Okta.
Okay, thank you, Alex, for the warm welcome. Allow me to just share my screen. Hold on. Okay, there, okay. So I assume that everybody sees my screen now. Am I correct? Is that okay? So I'm happy to be here, honestly, and I'm very excited to talk about my insights about this topic. So I won't let you wait for the entire presentation. So I am going to go straight to the next slide now. This is an introduction. What is digital recruitment? From the name itself, you would know that it is recruitment using digital, cloud, and basically general technological tools. But another term for digital recruitment would be, other than online recruitment, is social recruitment. And I will explain more about that later. Now, I know you're familiar about these platforms such as Workday, right? For those who've worked in very big corporations, you would know what Workday is. Workday is basically an HR admin tool. So it deals with people who go into becoming a candidate, up to becoming an employee, up until they decide to resign, and up until they maybe go back into becoming an employee of the company, right? So a lot of people know what Workday is, but the purpose of Workday in this presentation is I'd like to introduce that Workday is also an applicant tracking system. For those who don't know what Workday is, it's also an applicant tracking system. So what is an applicant tracking system, or an ATS? An ATS basically is an automated version of someone who reads a resume and scans for the requirements that they're looking for. So Workday reads every resume. Imagine thousands of resumes being handled by Workday, and not any person can do that in a short amount of time, but Workday can. So Workday reads resumes, identifies keywords that you're looking for, and presents it to you. Basically, that's what an applicant tracking system does. It saves time. Now, other than Workday, there's Caliber, or its counterpart being JobStreet, which most of you are familiar with. Now, Caliber is a job board. It started out as a job board, and it also functions now as a candidate search tool. Because when a candidate applies for a job on Caliber, they have to create a profile, for which, if the profile is already created to apply for a job, other possible employers can search these candidates as if they're searching for people on social media. So basically, that's Caliber. Same goes for JobStreet. And then there's LinkedIn. So LinkedIn functions the same way as Caliber, with LinkedIn Jobs and the premium version called LinkedIn Recruiter. It's basically the same thing, but the difference about LinkedIn is that LinkedIn is also a social media platform for which you can communicate with everyone in that network. And another one is Facebook, which a lot of us are familiar with, but some probably not. Facebook can be used for recruitment. If you're creative about it, you can use the Facebook groups feature on Facebook. Facebook is very strong in community development and community management. If you create Facebook groups on Facebook, a lot of people will engage with it, especially if you create a culture where people would want to engage with you. So Facebook is a really good tool for recruitment as well. And then there's these assessment tools. If you're familiar with the recent developments of gamifying the recruitment process, there are companies or recruiters that conduct recruitment with technologies such as the VR technology or the virtual reality technology, where people wear goggles and then they play games, but actually it's not just a game, it's actually a personality profiler already. So how do companies utilize this technology? The idea is that each company will assess the personality type of their top employees, perhaps the top 100 employees. They assess their personalities, get the average, and that average is the benchmark um, uh, profile of the ideal candidate that they will get. So this benchmark will be used to assess succeeding candidates so that when there is a candidate that fits this benchmark, chances are this candidate is the right candidate for the job. So basically, those are how recruiters using digital technology utilizes these kinds of tools. I personally endorse Truity. Truity isn't really a gamified version of an assessment, but it's a very powerful tool in assessing personalities uh, of candidates, and they can do it with a lot of candidates. So if you're interested in knowing more about that, you can just ask me later. Now, the reason why you're probably here is not just because of the digital tools or the technological tools. A lot of you, I mean, considering that we're in the era of technology, probably know how to use a lot of technological tools. Some of them you already probably know how to use. But I know why most of us are here. It's because the biggest challenge is, despite the efficiency of these digital tools, you're still having a hard time getting candidates. Am I right? Right? So you're probably having a hard time getting candidates. And the reason is because, to be honest, and I've gotten this feedback from the job seekers I've been coaching, the digital recruitment process of a lot of companies is so cold and so heartless that they feel intimidated to actually go through the recruitment process. So the biggest challenge of every recruiter, especially in this era of the pandemic where everybody is at home, your challenge is to humanize the candidate experience given these digital tools. Now, honestly, I'm not really the best recruiter, but I know what your candidates want. I've coached over 160 job seekers in such a short amount of time only, and I have heard them talk about their anxieties, their fears, their hesitations, and their dislikes about employers. The reason why they still wouldn't pursue such jobs, even if there are difficulties such as the lack of jobs in the market or the need of a job immediately. You know, candidates don't want just a job. If you reflect a little bit more, they don't want just a job or just money. A lot of them have other considerations when choosing a job. They probably want to make a difference or experience prestige, have a nice title, learn, grow. They have a lot of reasons, and we respect every reason that they have. But you must be reminded that in order to win candidates over, you need to build relationships with them. So how do you do that? You start by investing on employer branding, right? So what is employer branding? Employer branding, even if you've not done anything about it, your company or your employer or whoever you're helping in recruiting candidates, they already have an employer brand. Even if you're not doing anything, they already have an employer brand. The task now is to make that employer brand better, make it more warm, make it more friendly, seamless. If you do this, a lot more candidates will approach you and you will not have a difficult time letting them talk to you at the very least. So a lot of us are familiar with the recruitment funnel. It goes down like that. First, you need to make the candidates aware of the job requisition. Next, you need to find ways to let them at least like the job requisition, make them interested, up until they go straight to the end-to-end recruitment process. That's basically the recruitment funnel. But for purposes of this presentation, I'm going to group every insight I have with these 3 steps in my own funnel, which starts with sourcing, and then interviews or assessments, and then job offer and rejection. We're fairly familiar about this process, and I will discuss the challenges that you probably have about each step. But before I discuss this end-to-end recruitment process, you must begin with job comprehension. A lot of recruiters, they actually for lack of time maybe, or lack of valuing this particular part of the recruitment process, we fail to understand the job that we have to hire for. We don't understand why there needs to be a hire. For some recruiters, they fail to realize that some already know why there has to be this kind of hiring. But in my experience, especially those who are not very familiar with the new company they're helping, job comprehension is very neglected. So here are some of my tips to have excellent job comprehension. Number one is you have to know the mission statement to understand the business model. So companies, they exist for a reason. They didn't just pop up just like that. They exist for a reason. And they didn't exist just to earn money. They exist for a particular reason. So take, for example, my company right now. I'm part of Metamorphosis Group. I have a mission statement. My mission statement on a basic level is basically I want people to have jobs anytime. I want to help them succeed in the job hunt. I want them to get a job immediately. So that's my mission. Now, what's my business model? My business model, how do I approach this mission? I coach candidates to actually get a job, how to get a job, how to impress the recruiter, all of those things. I do that for them. So after my company started to expand, I started to realize that I want a content strategist for my company. There you go. We have a job requisition. It's content strategist. Now, what I was looking for in a content strategist is that I want somebody who's aligned with my mission, or at the very least understands what kind of message I want to send to people. Because for me, if there is excellent messaging in sending what kind of message I want to send to my audience, then more people will be drawn to my company, basically. And how does my business model fit in there? Well, if a lot more people get attracted to my company, eventually they convert to clients, and then they make the company survive more with sales and all of that. So basically, you have to start understanding the mission statement. When you understand the mission statement, you will understand or make sense out of the business model. The business model is what makes the company survive. If you do not take into consideration the value of the business model, then you will hire or recruit candidates that in a shotgun approach. We don't want that to happen for our recruitment process, and of course we don't want to waste a lot of time and let our candidates feel like they were just chosen out of desperation. We don't want that kind of feeling. Now, second, um, one way to have excellent job comprehension is to understand the functionality of the job, but don't overdo it. What do I mean by this? So we all know, or some of us who are already seasoned recruiters know, that in order to hire the right talent, we need to understand the job description. Basically, yes, what is the function of the job? What is it going what is this person going to do in the company, what are the tasks, what are the KPIs. Basically, we know all of those things. But some people, they get lost along the way. For example, if you're hiring for a customer service representative, it's different getting a customer service representative for one industry, and it's also different when they're moved into a different industry. If you insist that a customer representative only does a specific kind of task wherever they go, then that's the time you overdo it. You get lost in the functionality. And if you have that kind of mindset and you help your candidates or assess your candidates, you might end up losing good candidates because you've been by the book about your beliefs of what that particular job actually does. And then lastly, of course, for my tips, I would suggest that you study the employer's pain points. When there's a hiring going on, there is a significant reason why there is hiring going on. It basically means there is a problem that only a new hire can solve. So probably there's a lack of manpower. Probably they need an expert that can do something that they couldn't find at the moment in their internal team. So there are a lot of reasons why there's hiring, but most of the time in my experience, it's because the employer has some significant pain point that needs to be solved. Now, when you've identified the pain point of the company, you need to study your talent market. How are they like right now? What are your options looking at? Of course, you start with your network. And if within your network you can find somebody that fits the profile, then good. But in some cases, especially if the job requisition is highly niche, you would have to be more creative about it. And in that case, I wouldn't really suggest forcing candidates into a specific requisition or a specific role that they're not familiar with or they don't really like, even if they seem to be the best fit. There needs to be a expectation setting as well, which I will be discussing later. Now, about job comprehension and how it affects employer branding, we can discuss it more later. My email is also down there in case you want to discuss it more privately. So that's basically job comprehension. Now we're going to talent sourcing. And for you to successfully have um, good digital sourcing strategies, I suggest you build your personal branding. A lot of recruiters practice in a way that they post about a job and then they just wait for somebody to approach them. That actually works or probably works at sometimes, but there is a new way of attracting candidates. So how can you do it digitally? We're all at home. You can't go to the mall and set up a job fair anymore with booths, giving away flyers. We can't do that anymore. So the challenge is, how do we do that digitally? What I've seen that works is that number one, people create meaningful and valuable content for their candidate market. And I'll go deeper on that later on. I'll have some examples for you to view. Next is you would ideally have some events like a job fair online. You should host not just job fairs though, but career events with activities to provide value to your market. And third, I would also suggest you provide candidate success kits before letting candidates go to your interviews because you need to set their expectations. Basically, overall, these strategies actually work out because it makes the candidates feel valued by you. You make them feel like they're very important. And the problem for some practices is that candidates don't feel very important. They feel disposable. And you don't want them to feel that, or else you will never get their trust once you do that. More about this we can discuss again in my email. It's there down below. So this is my favorite topic of the presentation, content creation. Now I know you're recruiters, you're not IG influencers, you're not marketing people or graphic designers. I know you're not. But these are the things that I see that works out. You need to be interdisciplinary these days. You can't just stick to one field all the time. All other fields are actually complementary to each other. And for you to actually drive the best results, you need to borrow from practices of other fields. Basically like this, content creation. How do you do that? You create content that provides job hunting tips. You know how that sounds interesting? People will probably just message you all the time about these things. You can also share allowable industry secrets like, oh, this industry is struggling and it seems like they need more of this kind of role. Seems like people need to upskill in this particular field. You can share some of these things. Of course, if it's okay and if you're not bound by an NDA. You can also motivate candidates, have some motivational posts, just like how the top 100 Filipinos on LinkedIn do. You can also give honest but valuable opinions about recruiters and candidates. Honesty and transparency is attractive. You can also engage and show care about your candidate market. You need to show that you are somebody's friend, basically. So here's a case study of two different recruiters. This is my favorite part. So recruiter number one is a traditional recruiter. If you notice, his template is career opportunity. Here are the jobs. If you're interested, email me. Here are some hashtags so people will find this post. And if you notice, he barely has any likes. 2 likes, 1 like, 5 like, 2 likes, and that one comment on the fourth photo. Sure, um, it's okay, I guess. And to be honest with you, he's not even an underperforming recruiter. He's one of the best recruiters in his organization. He even won some awards, and yet he doesn't have the engagement that he needs. He, therefore, has other sources for getting candidates and other strategies for getting candidates. Sure, he's a winner, but here's the thing. We are moving towards a different era already. We need to adjust. We need to evolve. So if we want to utilize other sources of getting candidates just to succeed in our goals, one way is content creation. And I don't know about this guy, but perhaps he's struggling right now when he realized that his own strategy, which he hold on for so long, probably doesn't work anymore. What's a good example then? Here's recruiter number two, a socially engaged recruiter. She's actually a LinkedIn influencer, and I've worked with her in some projects actually. So here's May Anshu. She's a recruiter, resume writer, and career coach from Malaysia. Here's her post. Let me just read. Career gaps and breaks are not going to lessen a person's ability to perform well in their job. I've coached hundreds, seen thousands of resumes, and here are some of the reasons. Number one, toxic work environment. Usually a change in management leading to a fallout, family issues, need a break from stress of life, company reduction in workforce, upskilling or language study break. People who have had gaps are great workers. Some may be less fortunate than others. Unless it's a serial case of short work gaps, don't lose focus on the elephant in the room, their achievements and potential. Mind not the gap. So May Ann is addressing the elephant in the room. She is saying something that not a stereotypical recruiter would say in her market, which is probably the reason why she got about 224 reactions and about 25 comments. She's a LinkedIn influencer, which means a lot of people engage with her and actually like her. So here, right, she has 25 comments. One of them says, I wish more hiring and HR personnel see the issue like you do. And she reacts saying, precisely my reason for voicing up. She sounds so warm, so friendly, so human. She's building a human connection that cannot be felt if everything is highly digital, which is precisely the reason why people approach her. Now, when I talk to her about her success in recruitment consulting, she's not having that much of a hard time compared to other people. She's even teaching people how to recruit because of this strategy. She's good at content creation, and that's the result she got. Right. So that's content creation. Now there's job fair, our career events. You can do host career tips, webinars, conduct mock interviews, offer resume workshops, facilitate and schedule networking events, and strategize and plan employer branding driven job fairs. You can do that for your audience or for your candidate market. It will make them feel like you really want to help them get a job, which is very friendly, which is very approachable. Chances are you will get the leads that you need. So who's already done this? So Ernst& Young actually did this. They have a public group on Facebook if you want to check it out. I checked it out, and they have resume workshops and mock interview sessions with people. It increased their positive feedback from people, made people think that they are actually a very warm place to be in. I'm not really sure if they're hiring right now, but from the looks of it, I would want to be part of their company because of what they're doing. If I feel that way, what more other people? You can do the same. Union Bank did this. They recognized that the fresh grads of this school year are having a hard time getting a job because the market is new. No one has any idea what's going to happen. So recruiters and employers in general, like Union Bank, is helping them bridge the gap of getting a job despite difficult times, which again is very warm and makes people approach them more. Now, the third tip is candidate success kits. There are companies that do that. They send a PDF of things to expect. They provide value by letting candidates know what it's like to work in their company. A candidate is very excited to know what it's going to be like. Make them feel excited about joining you, then the chances of them being a warm lead will continue. You need to set expectations as well by sharing your employee benefits packages. I mean, in my experience, more people want the benefits than the salary. Well, it actually depends on other factors, but if it's down to the two things, a lot of people get more attracted to the benefits, right? And you can also give some photos of what the office will look like. Make them really excited to join you. And maybe share some tips to make them win interviews the interview you set them up with, like the STAR method, situation, task, action, result. Teach them these methods so they can succeed better. And for your benefit as well, if you don't teach your candidates how to talk properly in an interview, you yourself will have a hard time understanding if they're the right fit. And the problem with that is just because of their bad communication skills, you'll reject them. What if they're a really good candidate? Then that's, a waste of opportunity for you. Then you would have to spend some time finding another person, and you have no idea how long it will take before you find that person. So some companies I noticed did this is P&G and Unilever. I've had clients who applied to these companies. They receive candidate success kits from P&G and Unilever, PDF files explaining almost everything in the previous slide I showed. They have these PDFs that they can send, probably something that you would want to consider. If you're interested to know more about how to do these strategies, again, you can just approach me. So last part of the um, presentation, which involves more about understanding how to do well in the last part of the recruitment process, specifically interviews and job offer and rejection. You need to continuously make a good candidate experience for your candidates that has a high return on investment in your recruitment process, no matter what happens. Candidate experience is tantamount to good customer service. And we all know how good customer service drives good results. So here are some tips on how to interview and how to share the application decision. Number one, converse with, not interrogate your candidate. I have experienced recruiters interrogating their candidates as if they've done some kind of crime. It's not really a good experience. You'll expect that if you do this to a candidate, they're not coming back. I suggest that you would converse more with them, make them feel like they're at home. Some companies actually would offer drinks to make the candidate feel more at ease because you both need something from each other. You should treat each other like a professional. In the same way that these candidates want a job, want income, you personally, as an employer or a recruiter, want to hire this candidate to hit your targets. So you both need something from each other. There isn't necessarily anyone who's superior here. So you better treat each other more professionally if you want better results in your candidate experience strategy. Next, whenever you're doing interviews, make it an exploratory discussion and expectation setting meeting, right? So this isn't an interview about checking if somebody's confident, checking if somebody sounds cool, or checking if somebody has all of these things that attract you personally. It's also about exploring them and them exploring the company itself and expectation setting as well. For example, don't focus too much on getting to know them. They want to get to know your company or your employer. Share to them what happens in the job, what the clients are like, what the rewards are or something. Set their expectations that there would be times that there has to be overtime because this particular project is difficult. Set their expectations that maybe sometimes they will be traveling to different places, which might be a hassle. Both of you have to do that for each other. Because this is like a relationship, actually, if you think about it. Getting into an employment is like getting into a romantic relationship. And in every romantic relationship, you need to explore each other to see if both of you are in the right fit. And of course, to set expectations for each other so that you don't mess up because of misunderstandings. As much as you want to know if the candidate is the right fit, they want to know if your company is the right employer too. So you have to keep on remembering this so that you don't get lost. Then for digital assessments, since everything's digital, I suggest you would provide a good user experience. There are UX professionals rising around the world right now. I think it would be good to consult with them about good user experience. If candidates feel that going into a digital platform is difficult to navigate, I'm telling you, some of them will leave and will say, I don't want to stress out in this recruitment process. I'll just go to the other companies. And that's not even far fetched because you have competition right now. Everything is digital. Almost every recruitment process is digital, which means it's not difficult anymore to apply to certain companies. If before you would have a candidate would have to go to the office, travel far and wide, spend money just to go to the office, spend money just to eat their lunch before the interview or dress up. Right now it's fairly easy. And if it's that easy, then it's also easy for them to lose interest in you if you don't have a good user experience in your platform. And then you would, I guess, have to build rapport during and after the recruitment process. Whatever happens, you must treat your candidate with good service. Your candidate may or may not be accepted, but you will have to maintain the good relationship. And besides, we all know that when a candidate doesn't get accepted, it's mostly because they're not the right fit at the moment. Which means if they are a really good candidate, you might want to offer them an opportunity next time around. If you want that for your candidate, then you must provide them a good experience all throughout, even when communicating rejection. Candidates, they always complain, uh, I don't want to get hired by this recruiter. She or he always ghosts me, doesn't give me updates. We don't want that for you. You need to provide them good candidate experience all throughout if you want them to keep coming back regardless of the result of every recruitment process you provide them. Do not treat them like they're disposable at all, or you will lose them for good. So basically there, at the end of the day, you need to provide good candidate experience. And it starts with building good employer branding, making sure that people like you as a company. Then start as a recruiter with good personal branding, make them be attracted to you. That's a better approach, actually. It's an inbound approach. In sales, it's an inbound approach. People come to you, and it's less energy that way. It's a passive approach to getting candidates. Lastly, I just want to say recruitment in general. must be seen as a helping profession. I guarantee it will drive better results that way. Recruitment is a helping profession. Do not treat it as just a sales role. It is a helping profession rather. You're helping candidates get jobs, and you're helping companies get the right talent to perform well in their business activities. So there. I will leave it now to whatever questions you might have. So Alex, please take the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Danica. So I hope we all hope that everyone also took a lot of like new insights, especially with regards to maintaining great relationship with the people or with the candidates. I would just have to like express my agreeing on that because from my experiences before, like what do you call this? People actually talk in the industry, especially the candidates. Like people or employers' reputation is also spread evangelically, meaning candidates really talk, especially if it's in a niche position or niche title. So it's great that you gave all of these insights and lessons for everyone today, Danica. So we have a question from Nico Magalona. And he is asking if you can recommend some of the software platforms that can be used by fresh graduates or an individual applicant in creating and drafting a resume.
Okay, so on top of my head, I just want to introduce LinkedIn as a tool to automatically uh, generate a resume. If you rather fill up your LinkedIn the right way, you can actually generate a really good formatted resume in some part of the LinkedIn. So maybe I can share an example of how to do that. Allow me to share my LinkedIn. Hold on. Okay. So here's my LinkedIn, right? So I have all of this information right here. So how do I generate a resume here? I click more, I click save to be PDF. Do you see my screen? Hold on. Let me just share that again. This is what will pop up if you have a good filled up LinkedIn profile. It will appear just like that. It looks like a very nice resume. Has all of the information that the candidate needs. It's all automated. But the thing is, there are still candidates that need to do their resume manually because that would mean communicating the right elements on their resume. So this is what I tell my clients who are actually candidates. I tell them, that job hunting is like selling. So if job hunting is like selling, that means you have to have a good sales pitch. You have to have the good marketing collaterals, and those things are not automated. There has to be a human doing all of that. That's the reason why candidates would approach career coaches to help them fix their resumes. But for automated tools, I would suggest LinkedIn.
Okay. There is a request, Danica, to possibly view the recruitment funnel again from Heidi Ungad. And Heidi, if you have any questions about it, feel free to type it in here again. So while Danica is trying to flash back the recruitment funnel that she shared earlier, Brian also has a question. Brian Rosella saying startups have a vibe of instability. So how does one recruit warmly without scaring them?
Okay, so here is the recruitment funnel for Heidi to view. Now I'm going to answer Brian's question.
Mhm.
Startups have a vibe of instability. Okay. So in my experience in recruiting in startups, there are still candidates who would want a startup. There are still positives and negatives in every company. And the way that works for me is you have to see everything as neutral. So in my experience, candidates like startups, regardless if it's not stable, because they know that if they work for a startup, there's more flexibility. And a lot of people like that. So in my experience, candidates are very seasoned professionals. So why fresh grads? Well, some fresh grads, they actually want to feel very important. And if the company doesn't have a very stable hierarchy yet, then candidates will be very happy to work for startups to feel important. And for seasoned professionals, well, some of them actually want to feel like they can change the world. So if they can fix a problem of a very unstable startup, they would do that even if there is instability because they want to feel like they can fix it. But generally, the attractiveness of a startup is that it is it has the freedom to be creative, freedom to be flexible, and freedom to basically give ideas as a test run. And in a startup, people can do whatever they want. If they want to shift into a different role, they can. In very stable companies, employees are actually limited. If you think about it in a different perspective, employees are limited to their roles. They would have to ask permission to go into a different role if they want a different role, which is sometimes very bureaucratic. So those are the pros and cons that you can communicate to the candidates that you have for startups. And I have here Dancel.
Yeah, we also have a question from Dancel Dangla asking, aside from sharing posts or photos or any other, are there any other tips on how you can reach out to people, especially roles that are not popular in the market?
What other tips? Okay. Well, you can probably show what it's like to be working in that company. I know there are companies or employers flashing videos of what it's like to work in a particular role. Is this a niche role? Because for niche roles, I think it worked out to have videos to actually make them feel what it's like to be in that role, because chances are if the role is not popular, they don't understand it. So if you want your candidates to understand the role, you need to give them a visual. You can also use metaphors if you can. Recruitment, as I said, should be a helping profession, but it's also a sales role. So if you want to sell properly, you need to communicate well the value that you're going to deliver. Understand the market, understand what they want. If you get what they want, then that's a very good evidence for you to check how can I get the interest of this particular market to my favor. So there, understand your market and everything will be good in attracting for niche roles. Okay, so Alex, what question am I going to answer here
Yeah.
first?
So we still have a couple of minutes. So let's read out Vanessa Apal's question, asking, how do you convert interested candidates from Facebook or LinkedIn individual to an applicant? Because there are viewers or users that seem to be interested but are not applying.
How did you know that they are interested? Did they engage with the post? Because if they just engage with the post, maybe they just like the post. They want other people to see it. To actually get the interest of people, I think the most quality response is somebody actually commenting, I want to learn more. So, or if somebody directly messages you, if somebody directly messages you, my approach is to get into a call with them, understand their needs. And when I understand their needs, that's when I start telling this job actually is actually good for you. It can do this, it can do that, it can meet your needs. Again, this is sales. If you're going to sell something, provide value. If you're going to provide value, understand what they want, not just what you think is good for them. understand what they want, and you will get the results you want. Okay. So, what question should I be answering now,
Maybe
Alex?
as a follow-up question, I guess, from the funnel earlier, or it could be a new question. She's asking if you have any tips on how to better capture or recapture interest for the prospect recruits to push through with the application. This is to avoid or minimize the SE and cancel culture.
Capture, recapture interest for the prospect recruits. Okay, hold on. I see in the comment section introducing Canva as a good resume tool. Honestly, I don't recommend that. I know of Canva and I know they have a resume tool, resume creator tool. I highly, uh, I do not recommend it at all. The reason being that Canva is a PubMat creator, a poster maker. That's the kind of tool it is. If you put a Canva resume in an applicant tracking tool, the applicant tracking tool will not be able to read the resume, which is detrimental in actually getting picked in an application. So no, I do not recommend Canva. I do not recommend Photoshop resumes. Stick to the Windows documents or the PDF documents and you will perform well in your candidate search. Anyway, so question, any tips on how to better capture interest for the prospects to pursue that? Okay, so I assume that the candidates do not want to talk to you anymore. And you want to capture their attention again. Simple answer is you need to bring back the warmth. You need to bring back the good relationship. Actually, it really depends on how you ended your last communication with this person. If you ended your last communication with this person in a light manner, then it would be easier to reach back to them and maybe ask them how they are. Have you found a job yet? I want to help you. And then just make it casual, make it friendly. Just make them feel like you're actually helping, not forcing a particular job requisition on them to sell. They will come back to you if you make them feel like you're a friend. They will not come back to you if you say, hey, by the way, there's a job already, maybe you're interested. They do not want that. They want to feel that you are a friend. And how do you do that? I think you're looking for a concrete answer. Maybe you can start by making a very subtle approach on it. Just ask them how they are and see where it goes. Did I answer that question?
Okay, we also have another question from Shari Lagdaneo. It was mentioned earlier that applicants tend to discontinue online applications when they find the application tool too difficult and inconvenient. So, what ways are recommended for us to create a better user experience for our applicants and pursue their application in the company, given the difficulty of the application tool being used?
Mm. So, so you have to put yourself in the shoes of the candidate. Reassess your tool. So, for example, um, there are websites that function as a recruitment lead generation page. So I've seen some of those pages. They function as that. You're looking at the recruitment funnel right now. Some people are very strategic about it. They start with putting the top part of the Facebook or rather the website page as information that they need to know that there is a job opening. That's awareness. And then they can go next to attraction, making just eliciting some kind of feeling from them so that they would be interested to go straight to applying. So these steps of the recruitment funnel, if you apply that in your user experience in your digital tool, they will convert to an to somebody sending a resume. So it's all about user experience actually. It's a very, very deep topic, which I would take so much time to talk about. You can just email me if you want to learn more about that. I will be typing my email here so you can communicate with me more about this. So again, this topic is already user experience. It is a technological skill, actually, a technological and communication and psychological skill that needs to be discussed more in depth if you want to understand it. So you can just email me more about that so we can talk. Anyway, other questions?
We have two more questions that came in, so we still have 7 minutes. The first question, Danica, is hold on, let me just pull that out so it's bigger. So this is from Joanna. She's asking how to attract candidates to get interested to a job from a unionized company. As you know, there is a negative stigma of such from the perspective of possible candidates or applicants. So how can you make it a more how can you make a more engaging content about it?
By unionized company, what do you mean exactly? Do you mean there are unions inside? Like employee unions? Ah, labor unions. Okay. So actually, it depends on your perspective. It depends on your mindsets. There are still companies that are able to hire despite having labor unions. In fact, for some people, they get attracted because of the labor unions. I assume these labor unions are attractive. Now, this is very political, so I'm sorry if I offend anyone. But it doesn't really matter if there's a labor union. It shouldn't be detrimental to your branding if there is a labor union, if people are more accepting, more neutral about it, and especially if it's legal. If it's not legal, then you have a problem. So how do you fight that? Perhaps you can focus more about the benefits of being in the company, that you are free to do whatever you want. Just make it subtle. Maybe you can get something like the benefits of being part of the company. You can make a reference to that, but not very, very outright. I mean, I cannot disclose the companies. I know who do that, but some of them, they use that to their benefit, giving a reference to that and making it seem like it means that people have the freedom to work and live the way they want with the company. Even it very depend. It really depends. So those are some insights that I can give right now in a short period of time. But again, if you want to learn more about this, we can have a talk. You can just email me in my email right there in the chat box.
Okay. So we have, I guess, one more question, and
Mhm.
for any unanswered questions, you can always reach out to Danica. But for this one, the last question is: what if the office is outside Metro Manila, but the market is in Manila? So, what kind of approach can you recommend?
So this is foreign or in the provinces? Anyway, so
Mhm.
if the market is in Manila, what I experience is that you will have to subsidize. I promise to them that you will subsidize their expenses going to, living in this particular place where the job is. Some companies do that if they have no other choice, actually. Well, you have some choices other than subsidizing their expenses. You can emphasize on the good value that this job can bring them. Again, you need to understand what's important to them. If what's important to them is, for example, being with their family, then maybe you can increase the salary that's enough for them to live as a family, right? You can do something like that. Or you can also emphasize to them the good location, how cost of living is different, how people speak a certain language. I mean, it really, really depends on what's important to the candidate. There's no surefire answer for that. It all depends on what's important to the candidate. If I give you a surefire answer right now, you might fail because you need to understand the candidate. Formula is ask what the candidate needs and wants, give it to them to the best of your abilities. Okay, province. Okay.
That's amazing. Again, guys, if there are still follow-up questions, you can always send an email to Danica at metamorphosis-group.org. Also, if there are items in the presentation that you'd also want to revisit and share to the rest of your teams, we would be sharing a recording of this webinar for your perusal. So thank you again, Danica, for your informative and insightful discussion about recruitment and how employees and candidates, actually employers and candidates, can make use better of the digital side of things in making better approaches for recruitment. Yeah. So We're gonna be wrapping it up, but again, thank you so much, guys, for attending, and we look forward to hearing more about your questions or feedback even after the webinar, and of course, seeing you guys again in our next webinar. So, Danica.
Okay, so are we done already? Because my next thing that I want to say is that if you're interested in learning more about digital recruitment and employer branding and good candidate experience, you can just email me.
Mhm.
My email is in the chat box. You can just reach out to me. If you're interested for any help that I can give, you can also reach out to my email. I can probably help you. Thank you.
Yeah. Likewise, you can access a copy of this webinar either in YouTube or in KMC's websites. You just have to type kmc.solutions/community-events and you'd be able to access this right away. So thank you guys. We appreciate you for joining us today and have a great rest of your afternoons.
Thank you, everyone.